And today we're going to talk about basic clippering. I'm going to do a haircut for you guys to see how it's done, to go over some basic information, just to kind of get you started. Who in here has never done men's haircuts? So you've all had some experience, right? Good. So how many of you are still nervous about doing a men's haircut, but can get your way through it? No newbies. Okay, so all of you are pretty confident. Have done men's haircuts here and there? Yeah, for the most part? Okay. So what we're going to do today is just a basic clippering haircut, go through a couple of the sizes of the different blades and show you guys how to create your shape and everything. But first, we're going to talk about the actual shape of the head. I'm going to use this pre-drawn one because I'm actually out of paper over here, so you can already see what we have. Our basic human heads are pretty round for the most part, but if you think in anything masculine, when you're dealing with guys' haircuts, if you look at men's jackets and lapels and clothing, everything's always done in angular lines. The stripes on a race car, it's always angular lines, or shoes. It's very hard or angular shape to create that masculinity. The same thing kind of goes over when we're dealing with haircut. If you think of the goal of with most guys is they want a little harder edge. They want to look a little more masculine. Let's use our good old friend Justin Bieber for an example. He has previously, when he was younger, you may remember, he had his long sweepy bangs, the Bieber bangs. Everybody wanted that haircut, right? He looked like he was a young little kid. He was, cute and whatever. And then all of a sudden, they cut his hair shorter. They push his hair up, and it's all short on the sides. And now what? He looks kind of masculine. He's like, they're pushing him to make like sex symbol guy. He's not a kid anymore. So that kind of shaping you can do with men's hair, just to create a little bit more masculine look, in order to take someone from once a teenager to now into their 20s or whatever age. But basically, your goal is you have a client with a round head. What we're trying to do with that roundness, when we go short with clipper cutting, the blue is going to represent the hair. We're coming into that round shape, and we're creating squareness so that their head doesn't look so round, a little more of a masculine shape instead of roundness. And that goes, as we know, when we think of women, whether it's their hairs or their clothing, their body shape, it's all about curves. Women have beautiful curves, hourglass figure. The hair has a nice hourglass figure. With guys, it's a lot more masculine, it's squared off. So we're trying to take a round shape and give it somewhat of a square shape. And let's say this is kind of the haircut overall silhouette that we have given him. And you have the silhouette of the jaw. What you want to really try to do with short haircuts, especially with guys, is to create a balance. If you've got, some men have really big jaws, some have small, some are full face, different size shapes. There's a lot of balancing that you really still need to create. If you were to draw a line across someone's head right through the center of the eyes and fold that in half, your shape of the haircut should somewhat reflect the shape of the jaw and the face. That is a perfect balanced haircut on guys. Now that's not always going to be the case to get it to match exactly, somewhere in that close of a realm. When that offsets, when one is bigger or larger, smaller than the other one, then you're going to create an imbalance. So if you take, for example, you're familiar with Jay Leno. We've all seen Jay for years on TV. Jay's known for his big jaw. That's every little cartoon drawing you've ever seen of him, he's got this huge jaw. Well, if you notice, he's got pretty big hair. And they've done that to balance him out. If you take somebody like him and you, with a really large jaw, and you cut their hair too short, that's just going to totally accentuate that jaw, and it's going to look even bigger. You really want to try to balance everything out as much as possible. Another way to do that, of course, is with facial hair. We won't get into that because that's a little more advanced on the trimming, but you can also help balance those shapes out to match, especially guys, if you have a fuller face or you have a really soft neckline, you can use facial hair to really strengthen that off. But basically you want to be able to fold that in half and have it somewhat match. And if you'll notice, where our head starts to curve on the sides, those points are very critical when we're doing clipper cutting, because that's going to be the part where we either start to, when we're doing a fade, that's our taper area, that's our line, that's the section that we're going to start doing the tapering when we pull it in, because we want to stay as flat to the head down here as possible in order to come up straight like that. And we're not going to necessarily create, I don't want you guys to think that everyone's got to have a square haircut, because I mean that's almost sort of impossible unless you have the right texture of hair anyway. But you do generally want to have somewhat of an angular shape. You're either going to have haircuts that go straight up the head like this, you're going to have a little shape where it kind of bellows out to the side a little bit, and then on top just slightly curved a little bit. You don't want to flatten it too much. We're not doing flat tops anymore. We're not in the military. I mean, you might get that request. But in general, that's kind of what you want to do. Let's have our model come on up and have a see, and we'll take a look at his head, and we'll kind of get an idea. Straight comb. There we go. Let's see. Hold on. Get you a little higher. All right, so with his head shape, as I was talking about, you're starting off with round shape. And somewhere in that area where his head starts to curve, our haircut's going to maintain that shape a little bit. So what you can do, everyone's head has got a slightly different shape, of course. You can take your comb and place it right above the ear, right against the head. And you can feel with your finger where the head starts to curve in. And at that point on the comb, you just feel it. You stick your finger, you feel it start to go in. Right where that starts to go in, it's about right there on him. Come on this side where you guys can see it. His head starts to leave the comb about right here. So that actually gives you a lot of room to work with. Sometimes with children, it's a little more difficult with really short heads because everything's smaller and there's less space there before it starts to curve. But that's the first thing you can do very easily. Place your comb right here so you guys can see. And feel where the curve is. And that kind of gives you an idea of about where you can start your tapering. That's not necessarily the golden rule of whatever your area you're going to. When you get into advanced classes, if some of you are going to be here for the one this afternoon, we'll be doing some fades to skin, then that will apply there. But that gives you an idea of the shape of their head, of what you can do with it. Now, a lot of us have been trained in beauty school. How many of us remember this? When we're cutting the client's hair, they teach you this method. Scooping. Forget that. Don't do that. Why? Because if you've got a shape that's round and you're coming in and you're trying to scoop that, you're going to go, in that method, what have you just done to that hair? You've created a little heaviness, a weight line, so that you're not going to be able to blend that. So don't do the scooping method, because that's just going to cut the hair in that shape when we're trying to achieve this shape. So the only time, in advanced class we'll get into this, only time that you'll ever do that little scooping motion is when you're going into the fade to skin cuts. And it's a little tiny one, but we won't even talk about that for this class. But as you're cutting your client's hair, because we're working with a round object, remember? So if we're scooping, we get the right one for the right. Instead of going like this, we want to come straight up. You want to feel the head, you want to come straight up, straight up. Don't follow the curve, because then you're just going to cut everything too short above it. You just want to come straight, just like you're drawing this shape right here. That's what you want to do. Always remember that, and you'll have much better results. That's always a challenge that I see people struggle with when they're first learning men's haircuts, is that section, to get it blended smoothly so there's no heaviness. That's the #1 thing to do. You always want to start off with the larger setting. When doing basic cuts, you always start off with the larger clipper adjustment or size. If your client has long hair, you're going to want to clip it out of the way first to create the shaping through here. If that's the case, when you do take your sections on the top, you're going to come wherever their front hairline is. You're going to come right through there, and you're going to clip all that up into the top. And you're going to work, because this is that shape. That's the area that we're really trying to get a nice straight shape to. So you want to push all that up and out of the way. Luckily for us, he's got short hair on top. Saves us one extra step. So let's start cutting his hair. You guys have any questions for me that I need to address, or?
No.
Nothing? Okay.
¿Tienen alguna pregunta? ¿Todo bien? Okay.
Okay.
Si tienen alguna pregunta, no se queden, ¿eh?
Sí,
O
gracias.
sea, si tienen alguna pregunta y no la entienden en inglés, si quieren que les traducir, no hay problema, nomás me avisan, ¿ok?
Gracias.
If you have any question, please ask. Don't worry about it, okay?
Yes, please feel free to interrupt me at any time, especially if you're not sure or you might need something translated. So Manny, what can I not do to your hair?
Okay.
Maybe we'll use you this afternoon. Do some tattoos or something.
I'm busy later.
All right. So, I think what we'll do is we'll just, since he's got pretty short hair, we'll probably leave most of his length up top. A lot of clients think, that can be a frequent thing when you come in with guys, they want to leave the top alone, or they only want to cut it a little bit. So this would be a good example. What I'm going to do is kind of take them in stages and cut them simple with maybe 1 or 2 different size blades, and then we'll just kind of taper them down just a little bit more. Not to skin, because that's more advanced techniques. Once you get these basics down, it's pretty easy to start doing fades, because all the same stuff applies. You're just coming in shorter, and there's a few little extra things involved when you go to the skin that short. So I'm going to use 2 different. We're working with the Babyliss clippers. We can tell you about all the specialists. Kim, do you want to remind us of, do we have crisis specialists today for the class?
He's asking about specials for the class today.
On the clippers?
Yes. Right now, the specials at the end. I can give you information at the end.
Okay, they're both, this one and...
Yes, it's good.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Don't
cool.
worry about it.
This one.
Tenemos unas especiales el día de hoy. We had special promotions today, but I don't want to interrupt right now. So at the end, I give you the promotions, okay?
So we're using 2 different ones because I just want to work with both of them to give you guys kind of see what they are. We've got the Babyliss Pro FX811 cordless.
You're gonna use both of them?
I'm going to use both of them just so you can kind of see and get a feel of how both of them work.
Básicamente son dos tipos de...
No.
Son dos básicos clippers el día de hoy lo que van a presentar. El primero va a ser sin cordón y el otro es el que acaba de salir, el último que acaba de salir con cordón. Lo que va a hacer va a explicar los dos para que tengan ustedes dos soluciones diferentes. Okay, we have 2 different clippers, 2 kind of clippers today. They want to show you the first one will be this one and the other one. So and that way you have any question about the clipper, let me know.
So, our Babyliss Pro X2 cordless, I mean, this is fantastic. If none of you have ever worked with cordless clippers, it's kind of an amazing experience. Because as we know, cords are just...
I have one.
You have one? Mm-hmm. Awesome. The charge on this goes forever. The best thing about it, it actually has a Ferrari electric motor in it. Ferrari has designed the motors in these. First time they've ever done anything outside of the automobile industry. It does have diamond-coated blades that never dull, so they cut super fast, but also cut on wet hair, which is pretty killer. And this clipper is going to have, both of our clippers are going to have an adjustment to the blade. That's going to be key for you guys when we start going into when we start doing the really faded to skin haircuts. Not so much with the basic men's clippering, but you always want to make sure for basic work that your blade is closed. You guys can see how there's the gold and the dark blade. Everybody see that? It's 2 blades and you can adjust it and closes it in. You always want to have that blade closed in. There's a little diagram. When you pull this back, all the way back, that blade is open. So that's actually going to cut it a little tiny bit longer when you start going into the really tight fades. But when you're working with a number 2, 3, or 4, you always want to close the blade. Push it all the way up, and that closes the blade. Pretty easy to remember. So we're going to start off with the number 4. That's probably the most standard number that you'll work with, especially when your hair is this short. The kit does go all the way up to a 6 size, which gets pretty big, and those lengths you can grab it with your fingers. I usually don't, most of the time I don't use higher than a 4, occasionally I will. But we're going to come in with the number 4 first, and we're going to start getting our square shape. Let me make sure this is on straight because it sounds a little rattly. So, remember what I said, don't do that, please don't do that. It's going to cause more work for you. You're going to have to come in and blend that out. We're going to go straight up the sides. Now, his hair color is actually pretty cool to give us, it's cool on its own, a nice line to see, you know, to give us a shape. I always, when you come around to the back of your head, I usually will drop down just a little bit. Not too low, but you do want to drop down just a tiny bit when you come around to that back. And it's good to do one side and then come across to the other. It's a little harder when you try to go back and forth and back and forth. But you know, when you get your plug this in, when you get your rhythm down, then you know that's going to be your call on that one. I don't know if I have a cord for this. That's okay. We got 2 clippers. I honestly have not. Just to give you an idea, I have only charged this one time. I've been cutting with it for God knows how long. I've been doing classes only, but for like 3 months I've been cutting and not having to charge this thing, and it just finally went. Just to give you an idea. I do have a cord somewhere, but we'll look for it later. I don't think it's...
Por lo que hablan en español, básicamente hay dos tipos de clippers. El primero el que está mostrando ahorita es sin cordón. Básicamente lo pueden usar, lo pueden volver a cargar hasta probablemente a 25 o 30 cortes. Anita, tú lo has usado, ¿verdad? ¿Cuánto tiempo te dura en volver a cargarlo?
Solamente lo he cargado como 2 veces.
¿2 veces en cuánto tiempo? En más de 3 meses, ¿verdad? Sí, o sea, es algo formidable porque la pueden usar corte sobre corte, corte sobre corte y dura muchísimo, hasta 10,000 horas para cortar el cabello. Ok, esa es la que acaba de enseñar ahorita, la que es sin cordón. La que va a enseñar ahorita, el otro clipper, es el que acaba de salir, que es con cordón y tiene una fuerza de un Ferrari. Es algo la más fuerte, la más poderosa. Ok, para que vayan entendiendo y estemos en la misma página. No quiero que se me confunden. Son dos diferentes clippers. So, you explain in English for these guys also, please, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're taking the number 4 and we're coming up just, because we have a larger guard on here, I usually take the number 4 somewhere in that area, right about where I would have combed it, pinned it out of the way, just to kind of start creating that square shape. Now this clipper that I'm using, this is our other Babyliss Pro. This has kind of a hybrid motor. It's electric and rotary together, which is super fast. It's kind of one of its first in its class, really. It is brushless. It does not use the brushes like some of the old ones do. I kind of favor this one, even though it has a cord, because it's got a little weight to it. It's not super heavy, but it's got a nice grip, and it looks pretty hot. And of course, it has the adjustable blade on the side, except you've got the little handle right here.
Would the rotary be hotter?
Rotary one, no. The little electric engines, like all the standard wall clippers and stuff like that, those motors run a little warmer. This blade will get warmer over time. So if you're using this one for on the scalp, just keep you a little cool lube handy and just.
So you mean this was a little bit hotter than the other?
Not any hotter than the other ones. This one doesn't get hot at all because it's a different type of engine. But
the ceramic, does the ceramic cool it? Ceramic blade?
The blades don't. It's the motor that heats up. So maybe the ceramic. You know, that's a good point. The ceramic might not get quite as hot.
La gran diferencia en español, la gran diferencia de esta máquina, que pueden usar cualquier attachment que tengan ustedes normalmente lo están usando, el que usan, viene con 6 attachments, pero cualquier attachment que ya están acostumbradas a usarlo normalmente, que están acostumbrados ustedes tienen sus attachments, porque he ido con muchísimos barberos y me dicen, yo quiero usar mis propios attachments. Esto es universal, nomás lo pueden agregar a la máquina y pueden poner cualquier attachment, ¿ok? Es universal. Y la otra importante que tiene una fuerza muy rápida, corta el cabello bastante rápido, no es pesada como normalmente las otras, y aparte de eso el motor, cuando sienten ustedes la fuerza, corta muy preciso en esta máquina. ¿Una pregunta? ¿No?
¿Se calienta mucho?
Y no se calienta.
Muy poquito.
Se calienta lo que es normal. Porque no voy a mentir que no se calienta porque todas las máquinas se calientan, pero casi esta, el 90% no se calienta.
So a lot of your clients may have different hair colors that you're cutting, they bleached it or whatever. So this is a good example. Even though we still see somewhat of a line, it's a soft line. We know that we've done that shaping. We know that we can also come back in with some blending shears and soften that up a little bit. We also know when they touch up their color, you won't see that. So if that happens, don't rack your brain and try and blend that line out, because it's not going to happen completely because there's a color difference. That's pretty simple to understand, but keep that in mind because you may start trying to blend it out and it's not really going to blend out perfectly with that severe of a color change. So as you can see, we've already got a little bit of more square shape happening in his head just by taking that down. So we're going to come in with our next attachment, which is a 3. You always want to start from longer to shorter. Once you get your own rhythm down over time of experience, some people like to start with the shortest blade first and work their way up. I personally feel it's a little safer to do it the opposite way, especially in the beginning when you're just kind of figuring out how to do it and getting some experience, because it's, you start longer, you can always go shorter. And we know that if you start shorter, it's not the other way around. So when we come in with this number 3, we can see now that really where his head starts to curve, it's about right here, right in that area. So we don't really want to go any higher than that with our shorter blade down. So we're just going to come right underneath it. Now, of course, we're not only taking a little bit off below that. It may not seem like I'm cutting much off, but you do hear it cutting something, and that little something is going to make a difference in your shape. So don't think, oh, this isn't cutting enough off, or oh, this is taking too long. You are cutting it. It's all part of getting the perfect shaping down. Now, another thing to keep in mind before you start your haircut and while you're doing the consultation with the client, you always want to give their head a nice examination, feel for any lumps, bumps, moles, anything like that that may be sensitive. Usually if there's any kind of major scarring, the client will tell you that ahead of time. Either they don't, they don't care about the scar, cut it short, whatever, or they'll tell you to avoid it. So definitely discuss that first with your clients. If they're going from a really long cut to a really short cut, you want to find out where that scar is and then figure out, can we do this haircut or not? So that's a 3. Now, when you guys work, since I'm doing this class, I'm not doing this. When you guys work, always use your mirrors. If you don't use your mirror to look at your work, you've got to. If you need glasses, please get them. Because I made that mistake in the beginning of my career. I didn't use the mirror because I couldn't see that well. And I thought, oh, I can just step down in front of them and do this, which is true, you can. But over time, your back's going to be kind of pissed off at you if you do that all day long. If you've got this client in the mirror, you can very easily look and see what's going on with the shape. So please, please, please use your mirrors